Oh, that hits the spot. Nice, warm, fresh coffee. What is up, Scyushi Squad? We are back in Trove, and we are chilling on the test server on the Boomeranger once again because the Boomeranger is going through some changes. Now, to be clear, for those of you that haven't kept up, we basically have the Boomeranger Rework on the test server right now on PC. And the damage numbers that I'm going to be telling you guys today are changes that have been made on top of the rework. So in no way, shape, or form does any of this represent the current Boomeranger. And frankly speaking, there's going to be lots of changes anyways. But I thought we could have a short video talking about this today. And then we could end up hopping into a world and try it out and see. Because generally speaking, what they seem to be changing with this guy is lowering the base attack and then improving all of your other side abilities. And I haven't experimented with that just yet. However, they've made it so that they ended up reducing the damage of the bow's basic attack to 200%, down from 240%. They reduced damage of melee attacks to 200%, down from 270%. Oh, that kind of sucks because as we know with the blast bomb or blast bow hidden ring effect, that was pretty much what ended up making the ranged mode so much better than melee. Versus now, it seems like they ended up nerfing melee, so I never enjoy nerfs. Especially when the class is kind of on the precipice of already being bad-ish. I don't know. I mean, that's what a lot of you guys were saying in the comments, and I tend to agree. So anyways, here's going to end up being the increases, which hopefully will compensate. So they increased the damage of the melee basic attacks Cyclone to 250%, up from 100%, so that's pretty good. I mean, generally speaking, it was only doing like 1 mil before. That means it should be doing a little over 2 mil for me. Increased damage of boomerangs. So this is the triple shot boomerang when you're using a bow. That has been increased to 650%, down or up from 450%. Pretty crazy. And then they increased the damage of the boomerang of the wind, which is going to end up being the melee boomerang. That has been increased to 1000%, up from 550%, so that should be significantly stronger. We will see, because that's almost borderline double damage. They increased the movement speed buff from catching boomerangs to give you 30 movement speed instead of 15. I think the devs got a little bit confused because generally speaking, the problem isn't necessarily that the buff gave a lack of movement speed. It was that the movement speed didn't last long enough. That's the problem, devs. So just increase the duration of that buff so I don't have to cast boomerangs over and over like an idiot, and then we're in business. They replaced the attack speed buff from catching boomerangs with a 20% damage buff. There you go. Because if you didn't know, the effect here said that if caught, the player gains increased attack and movement speed for a short time. It was actually giving us attack percentage or attack speed rather than actually giving us damage percentage. Maybe they actually changed the description. I don't remember. But anyways, moving on. So increased damage of big bomb. This is going to end up being the bombs that you throw when you have your bow out. The damage has been increased to 850%, up from 750. They increased the damage of the tiny bombs. This is the melee mode, to 350%, up from 250%. And then they increase the damage of the Big Bok Bomb, which of course is your class gem ability when you are using the bow. That is at 950% damage, up from 800%. And then the Tiny Bok Bomb, which is the melee class gem ability, is going to end up being increased to 450%, up from 300%. They also ended up changing some things with the Mysterious Urn, which is nice. Let's hop into a world because these guys are distracting me. So they fixed an issue where some Mysterious Urn summons would take damage. I didn't notice, but okay. They removed the Berserk effect from the Mysterious Urn, which I think is funny because I never ended up getting that effect once. So for those of you that don't know, the Berserk effect is really, really annoying because it's basically the same as the Berserk emblem, where when you end up casting it, it forces your character to consistently attack over and over and over again until the duration of it runs out. Thankfully, they got rid of that in the urn, so that's nice. And then last but not least, this is something very interesting that we could end up talking about a little bit later in the video in regards to power rank sigils. But first and foremost, let's test this guy out. Let's start doing some damage. So our base attack is a little bit weaker. I mean, generally speaking, I'm not using Bok Bomb or Bok Bow. Keep that in mind. But, I mean, yeah, it's not like it's bad. It's not great either. The Boomerangs, though, that is a significantly more powerful. I mean, they were already powerful, but now what are they doing? 6 mil. Yeah, so that's really, really good, especially for the tri-shot, because if you can just spam these twice in a row, that did 8 mil on that guy. Good God. The cooldown is still really, really messed up though with it. I don't know if you guys noticed, just in general, like one criticism I still have to these Boomerangs is the fact that I know that this might seem weird. I think that they should set it up so that just casting the ability and then maybe have a little bit of a cooldown or something, or a moment of time before you just automatically end up having the Boomerangs come back to the player and just give you the cooldown reduction, because it's too easy to throw them out and to just end up missing them. And on top of that, we've already seen even in my streams and videos and stuff that you can literally just cast them right then and there and you won't end up getting the cooldown reduction just because the game didn't register it, right? But that said, you know, with the bow version, we've got a cooldown on our bow. The melee version doesn't have that. And then the bows themselves, the Boomerangs themselves, it seems like that's where most of our damage is going to end up being, which is quite annoying because of the same issue that I had talked about in other Trove videos before that I will bring up again. I really think that one of Trove's detrimental problems right now in terms of dealing damage with any class in the game is the animation cycle. That's kind of one of the worst things. And as of right now, unfortunately, the animation cycle of your abilities is not actually affected by attack speed, which I think it should be, because it's too annoying shooting out your arrows and then stopping for a moment to end up shooting your Boomerangs, and then you have to come to a complete stop. You have to go back to your idle animation before you start attacking. It's one of the problems that plagues the Solarian's right-click ability. That'll be a little bit more obvious than this Boomeranger ability. However, this ability is still affected by that. Anyways, let's try this out. Okay, missed on the explosive effect. The babies are way stronger, my God. Really? Did they end up just changing the bomb itself, or did they change the minions? They might have always been that strong. I still don't like the fact that they don't follow me properly. But either way, there we've got more of our babies. Yeah, see, these ones are the normal weak ones. So Bok Bomb as a whole seems to be a lot stronger because we see, yeah, so they, personally, I'd say that they made a mistake because they didn't end up buffing the chickens that you can get out of the urn. And so those ones are still useless, even though the Bok Bomb itself is strong. Now, here's a fun little bit of Trove trivia for you guys. Oh, it still pisses me off to this day. So when the Mantle of Power update ended up coming out for Trove, and we ended up having the rework to all the classes across the board, including getting their class gym abilities, fun fact, I was one of the few people that was arguing in favor of, why are you guys nerfing the Shadow Hunter? Shadow Hunter is too weak now. And then for years and years and years, we had the Shadow Hunter just be unplayable. And the irony is that with the recent rework, we had the Shadow Hunter buffed back up to something that was more adequate. Ultimately ended up completely surpassing the OG Shadow Hunter. But why am I talking about the Shadow Hunter? Because Boomeranger suffered from the same problem. So for those of you that don't know, Boomeranger actually was set up to be one of the strongest classes in the game with Mantle of Power, simply because these little chickens would actually end up taking the amount of damage that you had and applying it to enemies. Obviously, that's a little too powerful, but unfortunately, the Trove devs of the time ended up completely nerfing it into the ground, and it's just so stupid to see that we have to wait many, many years and for a completely different set of developers And now the Boomeranger is slowly starting to come back to what it already was back in the day before it ended up getting nerfed. And I don't know. I just thought that was a funny thing to share. What can I say? That explosion of the bomb was actually really, really powerful. Okay, let's try the melee. So what about our melee babies? So the explosion's not bad. That's doing 7 mil. It's not as good. Our melee attacks themselves are pretty good. Our cyclone, yeah, it's doing 2.3 mil, so that's kind of what I figured. Our first swipe is doing baby damage. It's funny how that works, but generally speaking, yeah, I guess I'm not completely unsatisfied with how the melee attack ends up working. Let's take a quick peek at the new Boomerang. Yeah, so that's doing around 8 mil, and that also does 8 mil on the way out and on the way in. How am I not getting crits? Oh my god, I'm actually not at max crit hit percentage. Right, because I re-exported my account to do the costume video. Yeah, so I gotta change my gems up a little bit. But either way, so it goes 8 mil out. Come on. 11 mil, and then 11 mil. Well, that's just because I ended up having Berserk Battler trigger. Either way, I mean, honestly speaking, so far, it's not that bad just because of the fact that we can actually use our other abilities. Once again, though, we are suffering from the fact that we have to use our animation cycle, and I think that that's really annoying. The other thing, too, that I feel is very, very weird with the Boomeranger right now, if I had some more critical feedback, I think it's very, very strange that the melee version of the Boomerang is the big one that phases through enemies, and then the arrow one is the one that shoots 3 out at a time for a burst of damage, and then ends up, you know, not phasing through enemies. Like, I feel like either they need to completely just switch the Boomerangs around. And you know what? Yeah, they need to switch the Boomerangs around, because this guy needs to have the one that phases through enemies, because that's kind of the big problem with ranged damage in the game in general, is you can't shoot through enemies, right? And so that's where melee always has the advantage in terms of farming, because a lot of times you'll go into a dungeon and you just can't hit the boss for the life of you just because there's all the enemies in the way, right? Anyways, that's my 2 cents towards it. Generally speaking, I feel like my criticisms towards the Boomeranger, ironically, are just criticisms about Trove's gameplay in general that I feel is holding this character back, which obviously means that those are much more fundamental issues that I don't know whether or not those would end up being changed. However, I would like to see the Boomerangs themselves swapped around. Their functionality just doesn't make sense to me. And then otherwise, you know, while our other abilities are kind of compensating for that lack of base attack damage, and I understand why they did that, I still feel a little bit disappointed that we can't just rely on our base attack anymore, just because, and ignore the fact that it shows Digsley. That's not the ally that I'm actually using. Or is it? Yes, it is. I am an idiot. Okay, now we're actually using Ernie, so let's do a real damage check. So our base attack, even the weak one that was doing like 1 to 2 mil, is doing 3 mil now. Our right click did how much? How much was that? He's so big, 15 mil. Yeah, okay, so considerably more damage. That means our little babies are going to end up dealing a lot more damage. That's like 13 mil each for these guys. 10 mil each, okay. I mean, either way, it doesn't really matter. The damage numbers aren't that big of a deal unless you want to end up drawing direct comparisons to my other video where you could see the damage numbers with that. But again, none of that stuff really matters that much, because frankly speaking, this character is going through a world of changes right now. And so, you know, none of this is going to matter when they end up tweaking it a little bit more. Now, last but not least, guys, I wanted to talk about this just for a brief moment. I know that we ended up having this video go a little bit longer than it should have for such minor changes, but I did want to experience that firsthand with you guys. That was my first time trying it out. Overall, I think Boomeranger is in a good place, despite the fact that I would like it tweaked just a little bit more. However, here's the last thing that I think is really, really interesting. They updated the 40k and 50k power rank sigils. Now, it's not currently possible to get 50k PR, but the fact that they're putting sigils in tells me that maybe something else is on the horizon. Not necessarily with the Boomeranger Rework update, but maybe, you know, either at the end of the year or maybe start of next year, we'll see another significant update that's going to end up increasing our power rank even more so. And if we were going to end up seeing an increase of power rank to 50k, if I was a gambling man, I would say that it is very, very probable that we will finally get our desire of having U12 and maybe higher than that for Uber Worlds. Anyways, I just wanted that as a little bit of a funny little bit of trivia that I ended up just noticing with the patch notes, because why else would they end up adding a 50k PR you know, sigil if they didn't intend to give us some method of getting to 50k PR? And I don't know what it would be other than Crystal 5, which the devs promised that they would never do, but we all know it's coming. Anyways, thanks for watching. Smash like, sub for more. Buy the merch you want to support the channel. And have a wonderful day, everybody.